Taehyun, with a basket of fruit, mentioned that she was visiting a sick person. There was food on the table, however. Taehyun placed the fruit basket on top of the food, crushing it. Taehyun was perplexed by this. Taehyun sat down in front of Taehyun and started talking about how she had heard that he was badly injured, but he seemed to be unharmed. Taehyun confirmed this and said the doctors told him his health was fine. Taehyun picked up an apple from the basket and began to talk about how Taehyun had saved many people during a recent terrorist incident, as Taehyun awkwardly confirmed that it was true.
Taehyun showing up with fruit for Taehyun is just too cute. It's like that kiss really opened her eyes to his charm and confidence. You can totally see how she's drawn to him now. And his regeneration becoming part of his power set, that's a game changer.
Or she just want to find out his secret to how he got so strong after Awakening not so long ago. With her personality, I bet she developed a complex about herself.
Dang, Chief, that's pretty harsh statement you just made.
Really now? Then you will love what happens next then. Taehyun mentioned that it was also said that he had faced two S-rank opponents. Taehyun, not understanding what Taehyun was implying, was looking perplexed. Without warning, Taehyun got angry and squeezed the apple until it tore apart. She angrily asked Taehyun if he had gone crazy, exclaiming that she could catch up with him in the blink of an eye. He asked Taehyun why she was even here. Taehyun looked away and, coming to her senses, replied that she was visiting a sick person. Meanwhile, Taehyun wondered whether he should call the police.
Okay, I stand corrected. This girl's something else.
Taehyun was shaking with anger and stared at Taehyun angrily while sitting opposite him. She thought that she had come to see Taehyun because she was worried after hearing about his injury, but to her surprise, Taehyun seemed absolutely fine. She also noticed a surreal aura around Taehyun and wondered what it was. Taehyun then remembered a kiss and blushed. Taehyun couldn't understand how Taehyun had progressed so quickly since the hunter exam. They both looked to the side because they heard the sound of the door closing. Suddenly, someone's leg appeared around the corner. Taehyun angrily asked the person why she was there again. Taehyun was shocked to see Uwan, her sister, appear from around the corner. Uwan was surprised to see Taehyun there. Taehyun pounced on her and began asking why the head of the guild had come to see Taehyun. Then, in surprise, she asked how Uwan even knew the password for the door. Crossing her arms, exclaimed that she had asked not to be called Sister Yu. She explained that the association had told her the password, but suddenly her attention shifted to something else. Taehyun stood up and began to walk towards her sister. Uwan smiled widely and sharply grabbed Taehyun's hand. Taehyun blushed and was stunned. Taehyun started screaming in surprise, asking what her sister was doing, but the guild leader just laughed. She began to stroke Taehyun's chin and asked what kind of relationship could exist between two S-rank hunters living in the same house. Taehyun blushed deeply and shouted in displeasure that this was a crime because Taehyun was still a minor. Suddenly, Taehyun slapped Uwan's hand away. He turned to Uwan and said that the jokes were over. Taehyun was clearly unhappy and asked the head of the guild why she had come again. He also asked how many more refusals she needed. Uwan held on to the hand that Taehyun had hit and said that was a little harsh since she was just visiting. She reiterated that it was just a visit and mentioned that she had a gift for Taehyun this time. Taehyun excitedly asked about the gift. Taehyun approached Taehyun and started talking about what she had heard from the association president, that Taehyun was going to the Asian tournament. Uwan took another step towards Taehyun and said that despite all the activities at East Point, Taehyun was still only ranked 30th in the public rankings. According to her, many more incidents would be needed to reach the 5th rank to represent Korea. Uwan put her hand on Taehyun's shoulder and smiled, saying that she would give him something. Uwan exclaimed that she would give Taehyun the right to clear the fire temple in the double dungeon.
Yeah, there's a catch to this, I'm sure. There's no such thing as a free lunch, and she's been trying her damn hardest to recruit him or place a leash around him for her to offer her help to help him rank up, and not want anything is to far-fetch. I hope my boy not just thinking about the benefits, and not the lost is in this offer.
sailing past the island where the auction buildings once stood. The deputy head of the Guild of Villains, Shadow. He inquired about the whereabouts of a certain person. A masked man standing behind him replied that they was still uncertain. The man asked Shadow if he should report this to their superiors, but Shadow replied that it wasn't necessary. The goal had already been achieved, and Neru was just a mercenary. Suddenly, Shadow's gaze darkened, and he looked to the side as a huge ship was sailing right behind their yacht. A voice over the loudspeaker called the yacht's passengers, announcing that they were surrounded. A man in military uniform commanded them to drop their weapons and surrender immediately. However, in an instant, the military man found himself in the water. Shocked, he realized that their ship had capsized, and all the crew members were now in the water. Shadow extended his hand, expressing interest in a guy named Taehyun. At the headquarters of the Nightwalker Guild, the guild members were celebrating, shouting joyfully. Standing before them were Taehyun and Hyung. They cheered, calling Taehyun the hero of East Point and the most promising star in New Korea. Hyung, with her hands behind her back, confirmed this, while Taehyun simply smiled. Hyung mentioned that if she and Taehyun clear this thing, they would determine the distribution of items and raid participants. Taehyun thought to himself that this was an unexpected gift, as he hadn't anticipated gaining the right to clear the fire temple, a double dungeon known for its entrance resembling a burning flame. Taehyun recalled what happened in his past life before the regression. The Nightwalker Guild had succeeded in clearing the dungeon, but had nearly faced destruction, with many hunters losing their lives. Given the risk, Taehyun knew that clearing the fire temple would significantly increase his social value. Despite his concerns about his reduced strength and stamina due to his destroyed right arm.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me he lost power? So what he did was some Piccolo-level regeneration? When did this turn into DBZ?
That I cannot answer, but if I think about it, I can find more series than DBZ. Taehyun was reassured by the presence of Hyung and the enthusiastic hunters ready to fight. As he looked at them happily, Taehyun thought that with their combined efforts, they could not lose. However, after some time, it became clear that about 300 people were not involved in clearing the fire temple. Hyung and Taehyun stood at the gate, as the attacking group consisted of only the two of them. The hunters, standing opposite the gate, shouted encouragement to the heroes, relying on them to clear the dungeon. Hyung smiled happily, but Taehyun was embarrassed and asked why there were only two of them. Hyung smiled slightly and said that it was because they were on a date. Taehyun was shocked and wished he could disappear. They entered the gate and moved towards the fire temple. Hyung let out a surprised exclamation, and in front of them was a huge pit glowing with something blue. Looking at the dry trees, the atmosphere was different from ordinary dungeons. Taehyun and Hyung looked into the hole, and Taehyun commented that at least the apocalyptic dungeon he visited before looked exactly the same. Hyung sat down and wondered how they could get down from there. Taehyun saw this and warned her to be careful, suspecting it might be a trap. A moment later, something grabbed Hyung by the neck. A monster had seized her with its tentacles and began to drag her down. Taehyun immediately ran after her, exclaiming that he knew something like this would happen. He took out a dagger and rushed into the pit, but what he saw surprised him. Hyung had used her skill to kill the monster. She smiled and said she had figured out how to descend. The monster was defeated because Hyung had pierced its flesh with her fist. Taehyun, who had followed after her, saw that she was fine, standing next to the defeated monster. Hyung's eyes shone as she smiled and said that all they needed to do was fall. Taehyun looked at her in shock, wondering if she had really killed the monster with just one blow. There were still many monsters below them, and the heroes fell right on top of them. Hyung turned around and killed several more monsters with one blow. She pushed off from the wall and attacked the monsters below, killing them with ease. Taehyun watched in awe as Hyung crushed all the monsters in their path, realizing that the monsters here were at least of rank A and above. He thought to himself that Yu Ah-young must have been holding back her true abilities before. Although he knew she was one of the top S-rank hunters, he never expected her to be this strong. Taehyun strengthened his skin and began using the chain skill. He thought that there was a good reason they were sent here, just the two of them. Taehyun also started killing monsters, deciding to put in more effort. From above, the hole looked very deep, but at the very bottom, there was light. The heroes finally descended. Taehyun stood on a pile of monsters, while Yu Ah-young stretched her hands and remarked that they had finally managed to descend. Taehyun wiped his face and exhaled. Yu Ah-young asked, somewhat displeased, how deep the hole was. Taehyun looked at the many defeated monsters and thought that although there were countless monsters, none of them posed a serious problem for Yu Ah-young. He wondered what had brought the Nightwalkers Guild to the brink of destruction right before his return to the past. Yu Ah-young turned to Taehyun and began approaching him, holding one hand behind her back. Taehyun extended his hand, and Yu Ah-young handed him a ring. Taehyun was shocked to discover it was a warrior ring of unique rank. Wearing it would dramatically increase the wearer's strength and endurance. Yu Ah-young raised her finger and explained that the right to participate in this raid was not just a gift. It also benefited their guild. Taehyun, meanwhile, thought that with this ring, he could even restore the characteristics he had lost due to the destruction of his right hand. However, he wondered why Yu Ah-young would give him such a unique item. Yu Ah-young, looking at Taehyun, asked if he was grateful. She added that if Taehyun joined the guild, she would give him even more valuable items. Taehyun was even more surprised, wondering why she was offering this. He shocked Yu Ah-young by looking at her wearily and asking why she only gave him the item now. Taehyun pointed out that if she had given him the ring before they started fighting the monsters, he would have been much more comfortable. As they walked further into the dungeon, Yu Ah-young followed him and asked if Taehyun was a sociopath. Taehyun replied that he simply chose what was more practical. Standing at the edge of a cliff, Taehyun said that from this point on, they needed to be extremely careful. He looked down nervously. Below, they saw the fire temple, and Taehyun remarked that they had likely reached the place where the dungeon's master resided. Ah-young was shocked by the sight before them. A large egg lay on the roof of the temple. The rank of the creature inside the egg was unknown, and Taehyun couldn't identify what kind of monster it might be. Drawing a dagger, Taehyun speculated that the owner of this double dungeon was likely inside the egg. As he turned to tell her that they first needed to gather information, he realized Ah-young had disappeared. Ah-young had already rushed into the attack. She had jumped down, channeling energy into her fists, and struck the egg with incredible force, causing a massive energy surge. Taehyun, displeased, followed her down, shouting at her for acting on her own. Ah-young stood in a cloud of dust, and when Taehyun asked if she was okay, she turned around, her eyes shining. Grinning, she asked if he was seriously still asking, and then joyfully declared that she had completely destroyed the egg. The egg was indeed shattered, but inside, something began to shine. Extending her hand, Ah-young speculated that the creature inside was likely an S-rank monster, either low or mid-level. Despite gathering all her strength into her fist, she hadn't expected to defeat it in a single blow. Taehyun was shocked, thinking this couldn't be happening. Suddenly, Ah-young turned around in surprise as a blue energy emerged from the egg, growing and illuminating everything around them. Taehyun and Ah-young shielded their faces from the intense light. Ah-young asked what it was. They were both stunned when a voice called them insignificant people. A monster appeared, hovering in the air and glowing with light. This creature, made of flames and resembling a phoenix, commented on the intruders who had come to the dungeon.
Wow. Ah-young jumping down and smashing that egg with such force was an epic moment. She didn't hesitate for even a second, just went full power and shattered the thing like it was nothing. I love the confidence she has, grinning like she already knew she won. But the reveal of the blue phoenix inside? Game changer. It really shows that in that world, even when you think you've destroyed the threat, something even more dangerous can rise from the ashes.
Yeah, Ah-young smashing the egg was badass, but I think she might have been a little too reckless. She destroyed it without even knowing what was inside, and now they've got this insane blue phoenix to deal with. Maybe if she had taken a second to gather more info, they could have avoided waking up a literal S-rank monster. Sure, her confidence is cool, but acting without thinking might have just made things a whole lot worse. Sometimes brute force isn't the best play. How she became the guild leader of her guild comes into question with her actions. The monster spread its wings, declaring that the power they had flaunted would turn to nothing before its blue flame. This creature was the master of the double dungeon, the Temple of Fire, an S-rank phoenix. An energy field surrounded the phoenix as Taehyun and Taehyun looked up in shock. The phoenix, known for its incredible regenerative abilities and resistance to magic, was practically an immortal being. Taehyun, holding his dagger, was surprised to discover that the dungeon's master was indeed a phoenix, and not just any phoenix, but one with blue flames. The phoenix spread its wings, illuminating everything with bright light. Taehyun shielded his face with his hand, but realized something crucial. Taehyun and Taehyun shielded their faces from the intense light. Taehyun asked what it was. They were both stunned when a voice called them insignificant people. A monster appeared, hovering in the air and glowing with light. This creature, made of flames and resembling a phoenix, commented on the intruders who had come to the dungeon. The monster spread its wings, declaring that the power they had flaunted would turn to nothing before its blue flame. This creature was the master of the double dungeon, the Temple of Fire, an S-rank phoenix. An energy field surrounded the phoenix as Taehyun and Taehyun looked up in shock. The phoenix, known for its incredible regenerative abilities and resistance to magic, was practically an immortal being. Taehyun, holding his dagger, was surprised to discover that the dungeon's master was indeed a phoenix, and not just any phoenix, but one with blue flames. The phoenix spread its wings, illuminating everything with bright light. Taehyun shielded his face with his hand, but realized something crucial. Turning to Taehyun, Taehyun warned her to be careful because the phoenix had the ability to control minds. He screamed out of concern, but at that moment, Taehyun began to approach him. A moment later, she attacked, but Taehyun managed to dodge. Taehyun was under the phoenix's mind control, and she emitted green energy, but her eyes glowed blue, indicating she was controlled by the phoenix. Taehyun leaped into the air, wondering what kind of veteran hunter he was dealing with. He dodged Taehyun's blow, frustrated that it seemed like a setup. Taehyun attacked, but he ducked to avoid it. Taehyun thought she was truly out of control. He used his king skill, summoning a spirit hand that knocked Taehyun to the ground. Taehyun held Taehyun down, shouting for her to come to her senses. Tension escalated as Taehyun barely had time to warn Taehyun of what might happen if they continued to fight. But before he could finish, Taehyun aimed an energy projectile directly at him. The mana in her hand surged, creating powerful energy blast. Above them, the Blue Phoenix watched with amusement, laughing at the chaos. As expected, humans aren't the brightest, the Phoenix mocked. Taehyun continued her advance. But as she moved forward, something tugged at her leg. She looked down, noticing a chain wrapped around her ankle, glowing with a purple light. It was Taehyun's paralysis skill in action. Another chain shot from the ground, followed by another, completely binding Taehyun. Though she struggled to break free, the paralysis took effect, and she trembled. Through the dust, Taehyun emerged, holding a stone shield in one hand and the chains in the other. He tinged with a realization. He now understood that before his regression, it had been Taehyun herself who had unknowingly destroyed the Nightwalkers Guild raid party. Taehyun approached the immobilized Taehyun with a stone shield, warning her that it would hurt, but asking her to bear with it as he struck her hard. The blow was so forceful that Taehyun spat out blood and was left stunned as she lay unconscious, still bound by the chains. Taehyun wiped the sweat from his chin, noting that the paralysis wouldn't hold her for long. He would need to act quickly to snap her out of the Phoenix's control. Taehyun's gaze darkened as he looked up at the Phoenix perched above. He wondered if Taehyun would forgive him if he killed the creature before it could fully awaken. Sensing Taehyun's building rage, the Phoenix laughed, taunting him from above. "Are you enjoying the show?" Taehyun's aura flared as his anger grew. With Taehyun tied to his back, He vowed to end the Phoenix's arrogance. "How can a chicken like you bully people?" he snarled before charging into battle. The Phoenix, now amused by Taehyun's bravado, attacked him with a barrage of fire projectiles. Despite the danger, Taehyun maneuvered, evading the attacks. The Phoenix, noticing Taehyun behind him, turned in surprise as Taehyun launched a dagger, its chain wrapped tightly around his hand. The blade struck, severing part of the Phoenix's wing. However, the Phoenix only chuckled as the severed wing regenerated. "Pathetic," the creature sneered. "This body is fire itself." Taehyun unleashed a flurry of strikes, but with every blow, the Phoenix's flames grew stronger, and soon Taehyun's chains were incinerated. Stunned, Taehyun watched as the Phoenix's body expanded, its form growing monstrous and sprouting 4 glowing eyes. "A weak little human like you could never defeat me," the Phoenix roared. It opened its mouth, gathering energy to unleash a devastating fireball. Flames erupted from the Phoenix, burning everything below. For a moment, it seemed Taehyun had been caught in the inferno, but he had managed to cling to a stone on the ceiling, barely avoiding the flames. Breathing heavily, Taehyun stared down at the raging Phoenix, astonished by its seemingly limitless regenerative abilities. Even with the Phoenix so close, its power and durability made it a nearly impossible opponent. As the Phoenix continued to breathe fire, Taehyun was overwhelmed not just by its power, but also by the fact that it could talk. This wasn't just any Phoenix. It was a great Phoenix. These creatures, unlike regular monsters, were mutants with extraordinary strength, so powerful that they were classified as S+ rank. The Great Phoenix was a force far beyond anything Taehyun had faced before. Taehyun's mind raced. If this truly was a Great Phoenix, then even with all his skills, he couldn't counter its insane regenerative abilities. He glanced down at his right hand, contemplating the only possible solution, predation. But using predation could trigger an uncontrollable surge of energy, just like the last time. It was a risky option, one that he could only rely on for a final blow. His hand trembled at the thought. Without it, he realized he had no real chance of winning. Fear began to grip Taehyun, leaving him uncertain about what to do next. At that moment, Ah-young, who had been tied to his back, regained consciousness. As soon as she realized their precarious situation, she let out a panicked scream, realizing how high up they were. She looked around, asking why she was chained and why her entire body ached terribly. The Phoenix laughed mockingly, reveling in their distraction. It spoke with condescension, but before it could finish, Taehyun and Ah-young launched a synchronized attack. Taehyun used his dagger, while Ah-young powered up her fists, both of them charging the Phoenix at once. Taehyun swung his chains, shouting to Ah-young to never let her mind be overtaken again. Ah-young glanced back at him confidently, stating there was no need to worry, it wouldn't happen again. The Phoenix reeled back in surprise, furious at their boldness. Its radiant form intensified as its wings glowed even brighter, and in an outraged voice, it demanded to know how they dared attack a being of its magnitude. From below, Taehyun and Ah-young stared up at the Phoenix defiantly as the creature declared them worthless in the face of its power. The battle was far from over, but now the fight had truly begun. Taehyun, sensing the critical moment, activated the monarch's heart skill. As he shouted, a surge of energy radiated outward, enhancing the abilities of the group. But Ah-young, stubborn and determined, refused his assistance. Instead, she began summoning a strange, glowing energy that quickly took the form of a spear in her hands. "Not this time," she said confidently before lunging forward. With a swift strike, her spear tore the Phoenix in two, leaving the creature momentarily stunned. Taehyun himself stood frozen in shock at the sight. Ah-young stepped forward, still gripping her spear tightly, and with a sly smile, she told him to leave the rest to her, referring to herself as his older sister. Her forehead glowed with a radiant mark as she unleashed her S-rank skill, Amazon Splendor. Ah-young's energy flared intensely as she entered her berserker mode, and she continued to relentlessly attack the Phoenix. Taehyun watched her in awe, realizing that she was using a technique that pushed magical power to its very limits, a method known as the birth. This form of magic release was dangerous for most hunters, as it could cause lasting damage to their bodies. However, when mastered, it granted power that was far beyond human limitations. Taehyun hurled her spear at the phoenix with such ferocity that it tore through the creature once more. The phoenix shrieked in agony as its body was torn apart, leaving nothing but its head intact. Despite its regenerative abilities, Taehyun refused to give it a moment to recover. She leaped towards the phoenix, slashing and kicking it with relentless power. Finally, Taehyun delivered a blow so intense that it created an explosion of green energy, blasting through the air and sending clouds of dust swirling around them. She stood amidst the chaos, her veins glowing with the terrifying green energy coursing through her. However, as she gazed ahead, her expression changed. Something startled her. Sweat dripped from her forehead as she stared forward, and then, without warning, she collapsed. Her energy drained. She lost consciousness and fell to the ground. The phoenix, too, lay broken, with only its head remaining intact. Even in its weakened state, the phoenix fumed with rage, its pride wounded. It snarled at Taehyun, cursing her as an insignificant little human for daring to harm a creature as powerful as itself. Though reduced to little more than a head, the phoenix was determined to exact its revenge. It began flying toward Taehyun, shouting that it would finish her off once and for all. But Taehyun, always vigilant, acted swiftly. He used his chain skill, lashing out and ensnaring the phoenix before it could reach her. The phoenix's eyes bulged in fear as it struggled against the chains. Taehyun smirked, calmly explaining that the key to defeating a creature with such powerful regenerative abilities was to overpower it with an even greater force. Holding the bound phoenix in his chains, he remarked with a grin, "I may be hurt in my pride, but shouldn't I at least finish this fight myself?" With Taehyun unconscious in his arms, Taehyun stood over the restrained phoenix, ready to deal the final blow and claim victory for them both.
Once again, Taehyun shapes the future with his involvement in another major event. It seems like the two sisters might be interested in him, but Chief, you have to admit they make a pretty good team. I can definitely see more team-ups between them. Still, even with this, will it be enough to secure him a spot on the team? Climbing into the top 5 right after emerging as a rookie is bound to attract a lot of attention, both good and bad.
Exactly. Taehyun keeps changing things up, rewriting the future with every move. That ripple effect is real, and you're right. The dynamic between him and the two sisters is something else. They've got this undeniable chemistry when they fight together. It's like, despite the chaos and their clashes, they complement each other perfectly, making them a force to be reckoned with. But you're also onto something with the pressure he's gonna face. Getting into the top 5 as a rookie, that's a crazy leap. It's gonna paint a target on his back for sure, both from rivals and powerful people who will want to either challenge him or control him. It'll be interesting to see if he can maintain that momentum and navigate the inevitable political and personal pitfalls. But man, the way things are looking, he's definitely got potential.
If you're finding this story engaging, feel free to drop a comment below. I'd love to discuss the unfolding narrative and hear your thoughts. And if you're enjoying the tales shared, don't forget to hit that like button. For more captivating stories like this, simply click on any of the links by my side, and together, let's dive into more immersive worlds. Your feedback and interaction make this journey all the more exciting.